Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Banner Gaming's Best in Slot. Today's show is really going to be for pretty much everybody. Today, we're going to be talking about UI improvements and things that you can do to make your UI your own. My name is Wisdom.
And my name is Kima Savex. Now, I'm going to say something controversial, all right, before we start this. I just want to put a disclaimer out there. This is more Wisdom's field of expertise, but I use a vanilla UI. Which for those who don't know, it means the regular UI. I've been playing since day one of Warcraft, and I've never used a UI. Wisdom tried to set me up with one. I just didn't like it. I like the vanilla UI. It keeps the little boxes in the side nice there. I got my damage meter here. I got my chant box here, and I have a whole screen to work with, and I like it a lot. And I played long time as a healer, and people would go, "You heal without add-ons for healing and the vanilla UI? How do you heal so much?" Well, I would take it as a compliment, and it doesn't affect my performance. I know, and if you're listening, please take a long time to listen to Wisdom because I am not the popular opinion on this, but it works for me, and that's the point. One of the reasons it works so well for me, though, is because I use a 12 button, well, actually it's 15 button, Razer, Naga mouse. So it has a 12 buttons on the side for the thumb, two by the mouse wheel, and one as the mouse wheel itself. And one of the things with the Razer Naga mouse is it helped me be way more effective in raids in general. And it also took me about 18 hours to get comfortable with. When you buy it, it says the book says, hey, give it like 16 or 18 hours of playtime. Pretty much, please don't return me. You'll love it if you just get used to it, is what the book literally says when you buy it. And it's true. Now, that might be the same case for the UI, and I might not have given it a chance. But my Razer Naga gives me the skill needed to not need a UI. I still use my add-ons. It's just UI is concerned. I use vanilla UI, and I love it. Because when I look at some other people's UIs, I got some of my best friends playing over the other day, their screen looks so cluttered. Like, how do you enjoy playing having a box this big pretty much to see the boss and nothing else around you? Anything bigger than what I have, and I don't like it. So I don't want to take up too much time, but make it your own. But also, if you're going to use a vanilla UI, make sure you have the resources to make you just as successful with that, and that's what the Razer Naga does for me.
Now, to just really start at the very most basic level here, whenever we talk about UI, it stands for user interface. It's the way that you, the user, interact with Warcraft, the game. Right? It's all of your buttons on your action bars. It's your health frame, the boss frame. It's the nameplates above enemies' heads. And it's also, where your boss frames are and where your damage meters are and how, much your chat window gets in the way, those kinds of things. Plus, it's all of the things that you'll set up with weak auras, which we're going to talk about here in just a minute. So really what this comes down to is how do you absorb the information that you need, right? How does the game tell you what you want to know? And then leave aside all of the things that you don't care about. All right, if I am just a DPS, all right, let's say I'm playing a hunter, and my sole purpose in my raid, and maybe even in my life, but certainly in my raid, is to do as much damage as is humanly possible to the boss and the adds during an encounter. Well, what do I need to know in order to do that? I need to see the buttons that matter. All right, so we're talking about my rotation, the cooldowns that I have, and maybe the things that are going to kill me. Probably the things that are going to kill me. And then probably access to some of the defensive buttons that I have too, all right? So I need to be able to know, can I hit deterrence right now and be safe from the thing that's about to kill me?
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but you're wrong. I think for the hunters, you just need one big button on the bottom corner, maybe like this size. That's the barrage key. And that's all you need, just barrage. Nothing else. Auto shot, barrage. But I mean, I'll respect your opinion too, so continue.
And how you present that information to yourself, you can do that in a handful of different ways. But fundamentally, it's figuring out, okay, what do I need to see? What don't I need to see? If I'm a healer, raid frames are super important. Being able to see my healing cooldowns and my friends' healing cooldowns are super important. So I need to find a way to track those things and make sure that they are in a place that I will be able to see. And I also need to know when I'm standing in something I'm not supposed to be standing in and how to get out of it. right? So these are the kinds of things that you really want to be able to keep track of and keep close. For
And
tanks,
you know what, you made a really really good point, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I feel like it needs to be said. So I heal with a monk a lot, and some things that I do is I'm normally out of all the healers. If something needs to be interrupted with my kick, or something needs to be interrupted with my just my normal interrupt, I'll roll over and interrupt or do my kick to stun. And I like to have that wider frame of view to see more, to be able to be more interactive. If somebody's not going to make it to the Banish and Archimon, because I'm a monk, I'm the one rolling over there, getting into the Banish group. If, I like small, I can heal well with smaller raid frames than most people can just because I'm so used to them. And I hop in more of a utility role than other healers in our raid do, as far as interrupting or being where I need to be or going with special groups, generally speaking. So for me, it makes sense to have less healing bars because I can heal with that and a much wider frame of view. Like Exolarak, I was mixing the colors, I was dragging people over, stuff that healers don't normally do but just need to be done, and I just happen to get it on me. I do that kind of stuff. Certain healers, like we have a really good paladin healer in our group. He's a great healer. His numbers are through the roof. We want him to primarily focus on just keeping people alive because he's really strong. He knows he's good. So it might make more sense for him to emphasize a little more in the raid frames and less in the utility, just because I have a stun and interrupt and I have a great mobility. You know what I mean? So it kind of depends. And I just wanted to touch on that because it makes a lot of sense.
it is a very good point. And really, this does come down to finding that balance of, well, okay, I can't just cover up my character with buttons, you know? I can't have one big barrage button right in the middle of my screen and then not be able to see that I'm standing in fire. That's going to be a problem. So, it's figuring out, okay, so what do I need to see? Where do I need to put it? And how do I need to keep track of these things? So, like, if you're playing a hunter or a holy paladin or a monk, you've got a resource bar like holy power or chi that you need to be able to keep track of. So maybe you want to put that somewhere close to your character so that you don't have to look up all the way in the this corner, to see where all that stuff is. Because if I have to say, okay, well, my focus is up here, and I've also got some buttons all over here that are part of my rotation, and then my character's in the middle of the screen and that's in fire. Well, then that means your eyes have to go all around the screen, and that's just not very effective. So if you can compartmentalize that all into the middle of your screen or some of the middle of it, becomes easier to see. But if you can't see that you're standing in fire, then maybe you want to dial it back a little bit. So,
and in case you're really, really new, the UI interfaces and add-ons actually let you put anything you want anywhere and generally make it as big or as small as you want to an extent. So in case you're like brand new to the game or you've never heard of this, I just want to take a second to explain that you can literally put things anywhere you want to. If you want to have all your buttons in the middle of the screen for unknown reasons, you can do that. Like, I know,
yeah.
Wisdom, you should tell them about your monk and how you had the cooldowns right under the important cooldowns right under your monk.
Yep, I'm going to touch on that.
And one thing I did use when I temporarily used this, I put my hunter, and you're gonna forgive me for forgetting the name, but when you're a hunter, you walk 6 seconds and you lose your extra attack power. So, or your crit, I forget. I'm just so used to just memorizing it or
It's
just
when you're
doing
playing
it.
marksman.
Yeah.
It's your like standstill sniper buff.
So you can't walk more than 3 seconds without losing it for a partial amount of time. So something hunters do is put it underneath their feet, 3 seconds, and then they know they have to stop moving and wait, or they're going to lose their buff. So if you need to get somewhere, but you don't need to get somewhere now, you can watch the bar, move 3 seconds, stop, watch the bar, move 3 seconds, stop. Now, me, I like to count in my head 1, 2, 3. I don't like the clutter, but some people need that. Some people like that. I don't like it, but a lot of people do. So that's like something really helpful you can have right underneath your hunter, for example.
So, one of the other big things that this really comes down to, besides just streamlining what you're seeing and paying attention to the things that you need, as a hunter, you don't necessarily need to see your raid's healing cooldowns or your tank's personal cooldowns, but you might want to keep track of your own personal cooldowns in a big way. Similarly, being able to make sure that you have access to raid frames, I mean, everybody should be able to see all of the raid in some way. I think the best example of this being important at the time of this filming is Iskar, because just trying to look around the room for people to throw the eye to, especially during the wins phase, is just a nightmare. If you have raid frames, especially ones that show important debuffs, makes it super easy to find the player, throw the eye, 2 seconds, 1 second, you're done, and it's nice and easy. But this is super important for people who have any kind of battle res. All right, even if you are a Death Knight, you wouldn't necessarily think that, well, I don't have healing spells, I don't have things like that, but you have a battle res. So you don't need to be looking around for somebody's dead body. You just find them in the raid frames, make sure that they're in range, click on them, and then they're rezzed, and it's great. That's the kind of thing that really people don't think about necessarily, but is crucially important. Now, even if you don't have these abilities, being able to keep track of how many people are alive and things like that, and whether or not, well, I guess if we're calling for a wipe, then I need to go find somewhere to die, or okay, there's only 2 people left, I can go feign death in the corner. Those kinds of things you only get from a raid frame.
And even as a hunter, like now I play hunter more, I keep my raid frames up. You know, they're small, so they don't bother me. They're vanilla again. But like, if I see a bunch of people in our group suddenly taking damage on a boss fight or on a trash pack, then I know to shoot up a misdirect and shoot. You know, it's not often with wisdom tanking, I'll be honest, but it does happen with certain boss fights or certain achievements or certain weird things, and it helps. Why not help your tank? Even if you're a DPS, you know, certain things you can do can really affect it. And even if you're, say, I didn't have a misdirect, well, I see my teammates getting attacked and hopefully running to the tank like they should be. I'll throw down a binding shot, a slow trap, an ice trap. You know, any class has multiple things that, you know, this whole series is about being the best raider you can be. Every class has something you can do to help your teammate. Stop your DPS, slow your EPing for 1 second, and save your other team member that's going to help you do way more DPS than your extra 5% maxing and, you know, stopping for 2 seconds to save your teammate. That's what this series is about. So no matter what class you are, you should always have raid frames up. But with the UI, you can make them smaller and, you know, just enough to give you a hint of, okay, something's going wrong. What can I do to help?
Now, I'm going to throw in one little personal note here as a raid leader, and for anyone who is watching this and wants to be a raid leader, get used to tracking more than just what your role requires. Right? We delegate a lot of the jobs here. I have a healing lead who our amazing paladin. He is largely responsible for a lot of the healing cooldowns. Doesn't change the fact that I
I
track.
thought I was healing lead. I call the cooldown. Oh wait, well I
Oh, we
recently quit,
switched.
so yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm a
doesn't.
hunter now. I was
Yeah,
the
you
healing
you
lead.
gave up the job.
But to my credit, he's right because you gotta. Not only was I healing lead, but like I would call things out like colors and stuff, and exalt and different things that when he was in boss crotch, he had me backing them up with calls. Like you can't expect your raid leader who's a tank. It's great to have a raid leader who's a tank, but they can't see everything, especially if their crotch is really, really big or smells really bad because he has one hand over his nose, the other hand on his mouse. So like you can't do everything. So when I was healing lead, I was assigning the healing cooldowns and I was calling out colors and random ass shit, while still pulling my weight as healing. And I gotta tell you, it's not easy. It takes practice.
But it's the kind of thing that, if you are in charge of healing or if you are the raid leader and I need to call for an emergency cooldown, well, I know what kind of cooldown we want. Is it going to be a throughput cooldown or a DR? And if I need to, I can just glance at the side of my screen and say, oh, look, we have a Devo up. I'm going to call for that right now because we need it right now or everybody's going to die. That's the kind of thing that I need to be able to keep track of. So, there does come a point where there are some exceptions to these rules, but, even on my screen, I'm sure that if you watched any of our challenge mode videos, or I think we can throw up a couple screenshots of our different UIs here for people to take a look at. But you can see, it doesn't really clutter things up too terribly. And it's done in such a way that it's easy for me to keep track of the things that I need to see. So we've said a lot about what you want to have and what you need to have. How do you do it? Well, let us answer those questions. There's generally...
This is how you do it. This is how you do it, baby.
There's generally speaking 2 ways to do this. You can do something that's I like to refer to as a sort of comprehensive replacement. All right, this is going to take your vanilla UI and in one add-on totally rebuild everything you have and make it look totally different, and it'll all be managed through one set of big, setup menus and options and things like that. This is actually what I'm using right now. I use LVUI that I've modified pretty heavily. And that's one of the big ones that you hear people talk about. But that has got its own set of advantages and drawbacks that we'll talk about here. But there are different kinds of comprehensive packages. You can go online or talk to your friends, see what they use, and figure out what's going to work for you. So,
I think LVUI is a great option. Don't be overwhelmed when you first download it because it's a lot. It throws a lot at you. But it really, really allows you to like if I didn't wasn't fully happy with my vanilla UI setup, it lets you put anything anywhere at pretty much any size. It is a wonderful, wonderful option that I would recommend to anybody who's looking to change up their UI to help them.
yes, this is usually a great place to start. I mean, people who decide to start changing their UI, they generally do it for a couple different reasons. But for what we're talking about here, a comprehensive replacement is your quick and easy way to get something functional. Because you can resize your RAID frames, you can stick them up in the corner if you don't want to deal with it. They're generally easy to deal with, doesn't take a lot of work. But Chemo has a point. It is sometimes hard to change one specific thing because you've got to dig through a bunch of menus to find it. Sometimes it's not necessarily right where you want it to be. It might be excessive for what you want to change. Like if you just want your bars to be different or in a different spot on your screen, a comprehensive replacement isn't really necessary. But, um, even though it can be easy to get overwhelmed initially, like having never used it before, the very first time I installed it, it took me about 4 hours to get everything pixel perfect, exactly where I wanted it, and set up in a way that's been functional for me. And those 4 hours have, kept me raiding happily through all of Hellfire Citadel.
It's definitely worth, you taking your time to set it up, Again, if I put more time to it, I might like it, but it's like the Razer Naga. It takes a while to get used to, but damn, did it change the way I play. And it makes my life so much easier.
Yes. So what you get for doing this, it's generally speaking a lighter like computer load. So if you don't have a great computer, this is also a good way to do things. It's normally not as system intensive to run something like a comprehensive replacement. Then it usually looks clean. Everything is skinned the same way, so it's nice and comprehensive, right? You have one theme running through everything. You don't have to, it's not a hodgepodge of different features. And normally the default settings that it loads up with are functional. I think that you could just install LVUI, use the base settings, and you would be able to play effectively. Maybe not as much as if you made really went and customized your UI, but it would be workable.
And like if you're a healer, like the vanilla UIs are always green for the health bars. You can change, what the health bars turn into. You can change the color. You can change, if with when you want it to be red. Like if you're a color person and that helps you out more, there's a lot of actual minor changes that you can make too that could potentially help you based on the type of player you are.
So maybe you give this a shot. Maybe it's not for you. Well, or maybe you just want to change one particular piece of your UI. Like, you want your focus bar closer to the middle of your screen, your alternate resource. It's just going to be easier for you to keep track of, but where your buttons are, that works for you. Well, then you're looking at just switching out individual pieces. And what you can do is sort of build your comprehensive replacement out of individual pieces, but that's not something I recommend. I actually did that for several years, and it's not really the best way to go about it. But this is stuff like Bartender. Bartender totally reskins all of your bars. It lets you put them wherever you want. You can play with them and things like that. It's really quite intuitive. It's very easy to use these individual pieces. Um, but it takes a little bit more load. It's not quite as comprehensive. They won't all look nice and the same. Plus, you've got 15 different, well, every single add-on has its own set of setup things and options, and then you have to customize it for every character and things like that. But you can replace your map with something like Sexy Map. You can make your numbers look different on your screen using something like MSBT, which is mixed scrolling battle text, if I recall correctly. And then you've got something like Citrina buff frames, which is what I used to use to make your buffs and debuffs look different and put them wherever you want and things like that. So that gives you tons of different options for doing one job, all right? I mentioned Bartender. That's one of probably 7 or 8 different big popular ways to reskin your bars. So if you don't like Bartender, well, you try a replacement, and then that does what you want instead. For raid frames, especially for healers, there are a bunch of different options that are quite popular that you can use. And they all do different kinds of things, and they do those different kinds of things in different varying degrees of effectiveness. none of which are quite as good as your comprehensive replacement. Excuse me, which your comprehensive replacement can't quite measure up to. You can do individual little like packages and track, sets of buffs and debuffs in ways that sometimes comprehensive packages won't let you. However, the drawback here is that all of these things have to be managed and updated individually. That's made easy with something like Curse, but on patch day, especially big patches, you might have half of your UI break and the other half works. Whereas with a comprehensive package, because so many people bank on it, these things are normally very well maintained and they don't break as soon as your next patch comes out. All right, they're normally PTR ready, which means you don't have a lot of those things happening or going wrong when the new raid comes out. You need to be in there on Tuesday. So, and then, some of these things fall out of popularity, like some old raid frame options and things like that. They're not updated anymore. Sometimes your favorite add-on gets put down by the developer. This normally isn't the case for comprehensive packages, or at least not as frequently. So, and it also generally results in a heavier system load. So different things to take into account. If you have a powerful computer, you can do it however you like. If you have a pretty poor computer and you struggle to get playable settings, then maybe try a comprehensive package. But as with all things, there are a few downsides to running all of these add-ons independently. Because, of course, they are all independent, they are all self-enclosed, so they're self-responsible. And that's going to take up more of your system resources than running something that's comprehensive. So when you decide to do things this way, you may not want to take this approach if you're trying to build a comprehensive replacement all by yourself on a lower end computer. Again, that's something you'll have to decide for yourself. It's not a terribly large difference, but it's noticeable to some extent. It's more than just a few frames. So pay attention to it and you may find that it's impactful for you. The other big thing, and really what stopped me from using all of these individual pieces to build a comprehensive replacement, was the fact that not all of these things are maintained in the same way. So you can't guarantee that your entire UI will be working when a new major patch hits. And if you have to raid later that evening, well, you're kind of left out in the cold if you've not got any kind of backup that's going to be up to date. Because of the popularity of these bigger comprehensive packages, they're normally up to date as soon as the PTRs are starting to go up. So you have the PTR versions that are ready to go, and then it updates on patch day, and then you're golden for the whole rest of the night. All right. So we've told you the two ways, generally speaking, that you can go about making your UI your own. But there's one thing that fits into both of these packages. WeakOrs, and specifically WeakOrs 2, is an add-on that I would call almost as mandatory as having boss mods. All right, you can put all of the information that you want to see where you want it ridiculously easily in a way that's very, very system friendly by using WeakOrs. So you can put the buffs you want to see, the debuffs you have to see, things like keeping track of active mitigation, procs, cooldowns, even like certain parts of your rotation that are really really integral, like keeping your Chimera shot or your Keg Smash or something like that, somewhere that's noticeable. All of those things can be kept and packaged nicely inside of WeakOrs. And what WeakOrs does is it lets you put icons, bars, timers, different kinds of visual things on your screen in different places. You define some load categories, some specific triggers, like, okay, I want this to keep track of my Keg Smash, and then it's going to basically do the rest for you and be brilliant and functional and easy to keep track of. It's a wonderful add-on. I mean, this is not by any means meant to be some sort of explanation for how to use it, but the internet has got tons of helpful resources, and if you don't feel like doing it yourself, lots of popular figures in every different specializations community have made their WeakOrs available to other players. So you can have your WeakOrs look just like the pros and just copy basically all of their settings into your own game very, very easily. So if you don't play with it, I highly recommend it. I would argue that you could actually get away with the vanilla UI if you really had to, and WeakOrs and maybe a set of raid frames. I mean, it's that important and it's that good. So it's extremely powerful, and I cannot recommend it enough.
So the bottom line here, guys, is you got to build a UI based on what you need and what you need to see. You don't want to clutter your screen, but you want to make sure for whatever role you have, you're getting the information that you need to know in the best possible location and way that works for you. There's no two setups that are going to be the same and work the same for everybody. So just do what makes you a better player and enjoy yourself more.
As always, thank you so much for watching. If you like what you've seen, please give us a like, comment, or even go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Every little bit helps here. If you like our artist and all of the wonderful stuff that you see on your screen, go ahead and check her link out down in the description. She does fantastic stuff. As always, I've been Wisdom.
And I've been Kimasavix. Please let us know what is your favorite UI add-ons in the comments section below and tell us how you use them. Look out for more episodes of Best in Slot, and have a good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.